A new science-based target for the telecom industry includes emissions trajectory reductions for mobile, fixed, and data center operators to meet the ambitious Paris Agreement goal of limiting global warming. Accordingly, the ICT industry is taking urgent action in response to what is being called a climate emergency. And here to discuss is John Frey, Senior Technologist, IT Efficiency and Sustainability at Hewlett Packard Enterprise, Jeff Edlund, Chief Technology Officer, Communications Technology Group at HPE, and Jeni Panhorst, Vice President, Network and Edge Group at Intel. Jeni, I want to start with you. We hear a lot about distant net zero targets, but what's happening right now to reduce CO2 emissions?
Yeah, at Intel, in our role as one of the world's leading semiconductor design and manufacturing companies, we're really uniquely positioned to drive this sustainability challenge globally, focused on greenhouse gas reductions and many other objectives, both through what we're driving directly, but also really through the breadth of our customer base and our ecosystem and our broad set of partners and other innovations. We've been tracking our scope 1 and 2 emissions for over 2 decades, and we've seen a significant decrease, 19% since the year 2000. And all of these are contributors to Intel's standing as number 1 on Barron's list of America's most sustainable companies earlier this year, but we're not standing still. Earlier this year in April, we announced goals to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions in global operations, specifically in scope 1 and 2 by 2040. And this adds to our existing commitments to really drive industry-wide action to address the climate emergency that you mentioned, Clarence. So if we look at a few of the specific goals that we've set for ourselves, the milestones we've set include areas like achieving 100% renewable electricity across global operations, investing over $300 million in energy conservation at our facilities worldwide to achieve over $4 billion of cumulative kilowatt hour savings in energy. And also, as we build out new factories and new facilities, we're focused on ensuring that we meet LEED program standards. And, if you've been following the news, we certainly have a lot of new announcements for manufacturing build out around the world, including just last week, a groundbreaking in Ohio in the United States. And it's really essential that any of these new building initiatives, these new facilities are meeting these standards. But also specifically in the semiconductor space, we're launching a cross-industry R&D initiative to identify greener chemicals with lower overall global warming potential, and also develop new abatement equipment and abatement capabilities in order to improve sustainability in the semiconductor industry. But in addition to this commitment to achieve net zero in scope 1 and 2, we're also investing very heavily in scope 3. And we're looking at this through a couple different lenses. The first is really looking at our own supply chain. So implementing new initiatives in our supply chain to reduce scope 3 supplier greenhouse gas emissions. And Intel is really committed to driving overall supply chain emission reductions at least 30% lower by the end of this decade, by 2030, than they would be in the absence of investment and action by ourselves and by our suppliers. And this will include areas like guiding our suppliers' efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from their operations, including increases in their own use of renewable electricity. Also maximizing opportunities to drive better circularity, better reuse and recycling and refurbishing of materials, and also looking at ways to drive consortia across the industry to develop new technology solutions and overall transition to a semiconductor manufacturing supply chain that is focused on net zero greenhouse gas goals in the future. The second area that we're focused on with respect to scope 3 is by setting energy efficiency goals to support what our customers are doing with our products. So it's really about driving efficiencies and improvements in energy efficiency of our own product base, such that when our customers build technology solutions, they're able to achieve their own goals. So a couple examples here include a goal to improve our overall product energy efficiency by 10 times in our client and server microprocessor portfolio by the end of this decade. By 2025, we also have a goal to improve by over 5 times the energy efficiency of our graphics processing products. And we're also looking at ways to reduce the overall carbon footprint of our reference platform designs that we provide to the industry for designing systems around servers and PCs by 30% or more by the end of this decade as well. And if we now translate this to what we're seeing specifically in energy efficiency of our product portfolio in the telecom space, if we look at use of Intel Xeon, Intel Atom, Intel FPGA products that are used across the RAN, across the edge, and the core of network infrastructure, including ways that we're using these products in traditional radio access networks as well as Open RAN and virtualized RAN. While we advance the capabilities in our products, advanced instruction sets, other acceleration that's integrated into the platforms, we're able to improve the overall performance per watt and overall energy efficiency of of solutions that are built with these next generation products. So if we look specifically at some examples, the upcoming 4th generation Intel Xeon Scalable processor, which is codenamed Sapphire Rapids, is going to be able to deliver more than 2 times capacity gains for virtualized RAN workloads by comparison to the prior generation. And it provides this gain without increasing the power envelope of the platforms at all. And so really provides an opportunity for operators to increase the amount of capacity that they're able to deliver in their networks while maintaining consistent power. So, it's really essential that we continue to invest, but we also know that none of this can be achieved without partnership and collaboration across the industry and contribution to a number of industry bodies, as well as just partnership directly with other companies across the value chain. And so, our collaboration with HPE is a great example of where we're fellow travelers in the technology industry, really trying to take a leadership role in driving sustainability objectives.
And John, what's your perspective on where we are in reducing CO2 emissions?
HPE has been focused on reducing CO2 equivalent emissions for almost 2 decades as well, with a series of reduction goals. And in 2021, we accelerated our commitment to becoming a net zero enterprise across our entire value chain, scopes 1, 2, and 3, to 2040. And this commitment is backed up with a roadmap to net zero and a new suite of science-based targets that are consistent with the 1.5 degree pathway. And in fact, this net zero commitment is one of the world's first science-based target initiative approved net zero goals. And how we're going to achieve those goals is first by some interim steps by 2030. And the first is reducing our direct and energy-related emissions of scopes 1 and 2 by 70% from our baseline. And including in that is sourcing 100% of our energy from renewable generation. Secondly, we're going to help our customers by leveraging our as-a-service strategy, HPE GreenLake, an energy efficiency portfolio, to partner with them to reduce their own emissions by 42% over that baseline. And finally, we'll continue to work through our commitment to help 80% of our suppliers by spend set their own science-based targets. And working through that interim goal will lead us to achieving net zero by 2040 as we reduce our entire global footprint by 90%. But these goals don't drive all the actions. Accountability does. So one of the things that we've done this year is required all of the vice presidents and above in our company to take climate training so that they understand the climate implications of the businesses that they run. And starting next year, our executive committee members will have part of their bonus calculation based on them setting low carbon roadmaps for the parts of the business of HPE that they run. Another piece of this is, since 65% of our footprint is when our customers use our products, it behooves us to help our customers improve their efficiency, which also lowers HPE's carbon footprint as well. So about 50% of our technology portfolio has intentional low carbon and efficiency benefits. And then when our customers transfer to GreenLake as well, GreenLake has the opportunity to help them reduce over-provisioning, to increase utilization levels, and cut their energy spend by over 30% over a 5-year period. We share our sustainable IT expertise and point of view, and the white papers and executive guides that we've written to help our customers transition. And finally, at the end of life, when our customers are making tech refreshes or transitioning equipment, HPE Financial Services asset upcycling service allows us to take those customer assets back, to refurbish them if possible and give them a second life, and if not, recycle them in a responsible manner. And through that entire process, then give the customer a circular economy report, which allows the customer to see the carbon implications of that end of use service. So these are just some of the ways that we're helping across our value chain drive a lower carbon economy.
There's lots going on. And Jeff, how do you see the energy curve trajectory in mobile networks?
Great question. And I think that we really need to set a little context. So we have the telecommunications industry going through a shift from 4G over to 5G technology. And as we start to research this shift, we find that by about 2026, we should see total energy consumption go up by 150 to 170%. When we look at what the analysts in the industry are saying compared to our own research, we're finding companies like Veritiv and 451 Research agreeing with these numbers. So we feel like they're pretty consistent. And I know that there's a lot of thought out there about, 5G networks and how they're going to be so much faster and so much more efficient. And while that is true, they're efficient in things like bits per bandwidth or the improvement in overall latency. But 5G networks bring with them some requirements in order to attain those efficiencies. One is you have to increase the density of the network, so more places where the network is exposed. Additionally, 5G networks are heavily reliant on IT-based systems, common off-the-shelf systems, if you will, versus having proprietary appliances that are placed out there. Also, 5G networks really increase utilization of the network and those that are hopping on the network that want to use it. And that in itself really is accelerating the amount of traffic growth. We saw traffic really grow during the pandemic period, and I expect that we'll see it even hockey stick higher as 5G becomes more available across the globe. So, that begs the question on that context of, the network spreading out, becoming more dense, much more use on it. What do we do? What do we do to meet our sustainability goals in regards to 5G, and how do we help the service providers make this technology affordable, deployable, and help them meet their ESG goals? I think the very first thing that we can do, and we will do, is take a data-first approach to the network. And we will push intelligence down to the edges of the network as the 5G network gets deployed. This will allow us to put intelligence out there at those edges and only transport data and communications back to the core that it's necessary for that to occur. Things like a lot of IoT use cases, or the fancier use cases like virtual reality or augmented reality, or gaming that people are really talking about, that will transact at the edge, and very little of that data will get hauled back into the core. And so that's one thing that we can do to really improve the efficiency of the network. Another thing that we need to do is we need to leverage modern software building techniques and technologies. So what do I mean by that? We need to make sure that we're not just trying to take software that we built yesterday and essentially cloud wash it and transport it into the cloud. Rather, what we need to do is build our software from the ground up with a clean sheet approach for cloud native services that deploy as microservices, only the microservices that are needed in order to provide a service for a customer are engaged and used at any one time, and then they go away when they're not necessary anymore. Another thing that we need to focus our efforts on are efficient programming language. So languages such as C, C++, Rust, we can use all of those languages in a framework called the 12-factor app, which defines the way that you should build a cloud-native application. And those programming languages have proved that they run more efficiently and put less of a burden on the infrastructure, and thereby the infrastructure requires less energy to do the same amount of work. Then I think the final thing that we really need to focus in on the mobile networks and telecommunications as a whole, and HPE and Intel are locked arm in arm in this, and that's continued innovation in the compute infrastructure so that we can generate those power efficiencies so that we can take down what it takes to actually run this infrastructure, these platforms, and reduce that total energy consumption that we see increasing as these new and modern networks start to get deployed.
Great points. And Jeni, same question for you. How do you see the energy curve trajectory in mobile networks?
Yeah, Jeff talked about a lot of really great innovation that's happening in order to improve overall energy efficiency and sustainability in the network. And, very often we think about the energy consumption coming from data centers, large data centers around the globe. But in reality, global networks actually consume 1.5 times more power than global data centers. And so it's really imperative that we focus on, as 5G explodes, as use cases around IoT, private networks, so many innovations that are happening, certainly at the edge and across the network end to end. We need to ensure that we're focused on improving energy efficiency and sustainability while data flowing through the networks worldwide continue to multiply, in some cases exponentially. And really, our imperative collectively needs to be to drive sustainability into every byte of data by embedding energy efficiency in the network layers, in the hardware, in the software, as Jeff was talking about before, and also decarbonize the energy that we are consuming. And so this really means that the ecosystem needs to come together to develop and to deploy solutions that deliver on sustainable outcomes. And we have a couple of great examples already in place that are showcasing great results. If we look at a collaboration between Intel and HPE that we demoed at Mobile World Congress in Barcelona earlier this year, we had an opportunity to show dynamic AI-based power management for 5G core networks. And we were able to see significant improvements over, looking at real world traffic patterns, being able to improve power up to 30%. Software ecosystem partners are taking these learnings and now iterating on this demonstration of what's possible and deploying solutions that are based on this technology. If we look at some of those edge use cases that Jeff talked about, in the extreme far edge, there's a lot of innovation that's necessary there as well. And another area where we've collaborated with HPE is with Isotope and their Cool Extreme micro data center solution in order to improve overall cooling solutions, and a lot of really interesting innovation happening there with thermal management technologies. And so, when you look at some of these early proof points, it really has an opportunity to create kind of motivation and role modeling with the telcos and the overall networking ecosystem in order to show what's possible in becoming more sustainable. Sometimes this motivation also comes in the form of regulatory change. So as just one example, France recently passed a law in the last couple of years aiming to reduce overall carbon footprint of the ICT industry in France. And so what this means is that that telecom operators in France like Orange, SFR, Frey, and others will have to publish key indicators on policies for reducing their overall environmental footprint. And we certainly see in other countries and other jurisdictions as well, worldwide telco operators accelerating their own commitments to achieving net zero goals. So, realistically, when you look at the complexity of the ecosystem and the value chain that we are all part of in the telecom industry, no one partner can resolve this massive global challenge on our own. The entire value chain needs to play a part, whether it's addressing aspects of embodied carbon or operational carbon, circularity, reuse of equipment, to make sure that we build a more sustainable network for the future. And of course, the services and the use cases that our technology will make possible in the network and edge and the infrastructure of the future will impact sustainability in many different ways. Jeff talked a great deal about the intelligence that's being embedded end to end across the network. This has the power to improve overall energy efficiency and footprint as well. So, as we look across our supply chain, as well as being part of our own customer supply chain and that overall value chain end to end, we're really focused on prioritizing addressing these issues.
And Jeni, you mentioned the industry coming together. Tell us about the joint call to action in the ICT sector and its projected impact on the environment.
Yeah, I mean, these problems are massive. You mentioned a climate emergency, right? This is something that no one company or entity can tackle alone. Our overall shared goal is to put sustainability first in the network by creating solutions that meet the need for exponentially more processing, exponentially more data, while running more efficiently, and reducing the overall footprint and the overall energy consumption that is driven by that technology. And really, this can only happen through cooperation and co-development and co-innovation. Intel and HPE, we are locked arm in arm for sure, but it really requires partnership across the entire ecosystem. Just as a couple examples, software partners need to ensure that they're leveraging hardware feature sets that exist in the silicon and in the hardware platforms to take advantage of technology that enables them to lower their overall energy consumption and overall power footprint. HPE GreenLake was already mentioned, taking advantage of next generation offerings like GreenLake, like Silicon on Demand, in order to more sustainably deploy and manage infrastructure and solutions. If we look at the roles of OSVs and ISVs and system integrators, we need to make sure that they're taking advantage of all of these underlying hardware capabilities. The operators themselves need to be very transparent with their requirements and their needs, whether they're driven by those regulatory requirements that I mentioned earlier, whether they're driven by their own net zero goals, but they need to build that into what it is that they're driving into their own supply chain. And as we partner together to co-innovate, to build POCs, drive trials, and ultimately drive commercial deployments of accelerated, energy efficient solutions, we need to make sure that all of this is comprehended in the vendor community, and all of those requirements are reflected in the RFPs, RFIs, in order to build out their next generation networks. We've got decades of investment in silicon and solution and other features that deliver power efficiency. And, we at Intel are really focused on ensuring that we're equipping the ecosystem to respond to our global climate challenges. And specifically as it applies to the network, really helping to define the green network of tomorrow, focused in areas like, renewable energy, energy efficiency, that end-to-end intelligence, that flexibility, that circularity, recyclability, upgradability, modularity of hardware capabilities, and also ultimately carbon awareness and carbon responsiveness, and the overall opportunity to reduce our footprint. And as we look at the opportunity to continue to drive innovation, HPE and Intel have collaborated on telco blueprints for many years to help establish telco grade infrastructure for service providers around the world. And in these blueprints are ways to leverage power management ingredients and capabilities, along with HPE system management and telemetry features, to enable operators to overall optimize their power within the network. And we continue to collaborate on these blueprints to drive the innovation necessary in order to build tomorrow's sustainable network. So, ultimately our goal collectively, and my call to action to all of you, is to focus on ways that we can build solutions to help tackle our biggest challenges in the area of sustainability and climate change.
And Jeff, what's your perspective on this joint call to action?
I think it's a great call to action. I would add to it one thing, and that is, lots of times this gets presented as a burdensome responsibility. And what I would say to everybody that's listening today is that, as we work together to solve these really large sustainability problems, what you're going to find is as you make the investment to take this seriously, you're going to get so much of benefit back. We modernize the networks. We modernize the technologies that are being used. We implement radical hyper automation. And all of this allows us to offer better services to our customer far more quickly than we were able to do that before, far more efficiently than we were able to do it before, taking down overall costs and frankly, improving the entire experience for everybody as we're taking on this as a serious responsibility. So this isn't about just cost and plowing more dollars into investment in the network just to get to business as usual. This is about using our dollars efficiently to optimize the things that we do today and for the future. And as we go on this journey, you'll find that the investment actually pays back far more than was ever put into it. Not in just solving these huge sustainability problems, but allowing you to become more efficient, more responsive to customers, more agile, and frankly, delivering innovations that you may not have even been anticipating when you start on this ESG journey.
And John, I'll give you the final thoughts on this industry-wide initiative.
We've heard a lot of great suggestions. And one of the things I hope you heard was that between Intel and HPE, we have over 2 decades of sustainability experience and innovation experience driving low carbon solutions. So my first takeaway for you is take advantage of our expertise. We're happy to tell our stories. We're happy to partner with our customers to find better solutions to lower our collective carbon impact. When we surveyed 500 technology executives across the EMEA region and asked them, where do you expect to get your sustainable IT expertise from? Their number one answer was from their vendors. And so we're happy to share that expertise with you as well. Both companies have white papers and resources that you can leverage to drive low carbon solutions. In fact, one of the things that we found is many of our customers implement efficiency solutions in a variety of tactical ways, but they don't seem to have a broader sustainable IT strategy. To help solve that challenge, HPE developed an executive workbook called 6 Steps for Developing a Sustainable IT Strategy that walks you through the process of bringing the resources together, looking at your company's goals and the commitments that you've made to your customers, looking at the right stakeholders within your company. For example, if the initiative is going to drive financial savings, make sure your financial community is there to help quantify those. You know you're going to make sustainability benefits, so have your sustainability team there as well to help quantify those benefits. As you do this, you're going to have a great story that you can then share with your customers. So make sure your communications and marketing teams are involved in the initiatives as well. So as we all work together, we can drive a successful low carbon future for all of us.
I appreciate you all sharing this information that is good for our industry and good for our planet. Jeni, John, Jeff, thank you all for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Clarence.